Okay, thank you. I guess it's best to start now, and we will ask panelists, and we will welcome everyone as they join us. One more time, thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to welcome you to the second webinar in row in the series called Euromed Innovate series, cluster series. It's a series of webinars that ERF and FINIS are organizing under the umbrella of Euromed Cluster Forward project. I'll take you very quickly through our agenda today to make sure that everyone is updated on the how on the flow. So we will be starting with a welcoming remarks delivered by Dr. Ibrahim Al-Badawi, ERF Managing Director, and Ms. Zoe from Euromed Cluster Project. And then we will move to an overview of the Agri-Food sector by Dr. Shahir Zaki. And before that, I'll deliver a very small introduction about Euromed Cluster Innovate webinar series. And then we will go directly to our two panels we have on agri-food clusters and ecosystem. The session will be moderated by Yasmin Fahim from ERF, and we have a number of esteemed speakers. And then we will move to the second panel on strengthening value chains and export opportunities. And then we will conclude our webinar with two presentations from Anima Network, one on the twinning and matching projects that have been taking place under Euromed Cluster Forward, and then we will hear more about further projects under the EU or co-funded projects by EU that are actually either opening soon or have paused, so that everyone is aware of EU activities currently and in the future. And then we will conclude with Q&A and few closing remarks. So before we start, I'd like to remind everyone that we do have translation, English, French translation available. Please make sure you choose the channel accordingly to the language, the preference language you prefer to hear in. And I'd like to ask all our panelists, moderators, and speakers to please try to watch your pace while you're speaking to give our translators a chance to hear us and provide the required translation. Without any further delay, Dr. Ibrahim Al-Badawi, the floor is yours to give us the welcoming group.
Thank you, Yasmin, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's webinar under the theme Harvesting Opportunities, Policy Twinning, and Agri-Food Value Chains Across the Mediterranean. This session is part of the Euromed Cluster Innovative Webinar Series, organized under the EU co-founded Euromed Cluster Forward, ECF project, which aims to address key challenges and opportunities within the Mediterranean region and foster cross-sectional collaboration. The agri-food sector is a cornerstone of sustainable development in the southern Mediterranean, contributing to both economic growth and environmental resilience. The region's agricultural diversity and strategic position make it a leader in sustainable agri-food practices. According to the project's mapping exercise, 17% of the 82 clusters identified in the South Mediterranean region operate within the agri-food sector. Understanding or underscoring the critical role these networks play in driving regional economic integration. Furthermore, innovative initiatives such as agro-tourism are successfully blending agriculture with tourism, preserving cultural heritage, and contributing to sustainable economic diversification. On behalf of the Economic Research Forum and our partners, I extend my gratitude to our expert speakers and moderators for their valuable contribution and insights. We are fortunate to have a distinguished group of experts and specialists with us today. I encourage you to engage fully in the discussion, share insights, and explore strategies that can strengthen collective efforts. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to a productive and engaging discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim. I'm glad Emmanuel managed to join us. Emmanuel, the floor is yours for the welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much, Yasmin. I hope you hear me well. Yes, indeed, I'm happy to. I wanted to share a few words with you at the beginning of this meeting, since I'm traveling in Tunisia. But I wanted to thank you, ERF, for the organization of this meeting, and welcome all the panelists and the speakers. We're happy to see such a great quality of experts and of organizations, of partners together for this important session on agri-food today. So for 2 words on Anima, you know, we are coordinating this project on clusters development in the Mediterranean. There is big challenges today in this region, which are related to the upmarket of the industry, the necessity to work more with neighbor countries to regionalize value chains in this Euromed region, and we believe at Anima that clusters can play a great role to facilitate this, and this is why with the European Commission, who is co-funding this project, we are very active in developing the support to clusters in general within this project, Euromed Clusters Forward, by addressing the capacity building needs of the clusters, but also by addressing the policy and strategic needs at country level for clusters, as well as the individual business connections from the clusters. So again, welcome. I wish you fruitful discussion, and I wanted to thank all the partners to be there. My colleague Zoé Luçon, who is coordinating the networking part of this Euromed Cluster Forward will be there. Andy Ramora-Sata, the Director of Development of Anima, is there also with you, and we will very much look forward to have a fruitful collaboration after this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. So I'll be taking the floor now to give you a very brief introduction about this series that we're organizing, the webinar series we're organizing. Today's webinar is part of a broader, everyone can see my screen, right? Excellent. So today's webinar is part of a series called Euromed Cluster Innovate Webinar Series, which is designed by nature to provide a platform to address evolving needs and challenges in different economic sectors in the Mediterranean region. We have divided this series into 2 webinars. The first one is called sectoral webinars. We will focus on specific industries and sectors, and the other would be thematic webinars where we discuss cross-cutting issues and trends in Euromed region. For the sectoral webinars, we've started this webinar to give you an idea about why we designed these 2 sectors or these 2 types of webinars. This has to take us back to an exercise that ERF, UNIDO, and Anima continued in the beginning of the project, where we mapped the clusters that are actually active currently in the Euromed region, and we focused on the South Med region clusters operating in the South Mediterranean countries. And according to this exercise, as you can see now, we have 82. We found out that we have 82 South Med clusters, and this is the distribution. The graph on the left gives you a distribution of the cluster by country. So there is 26 clusters in Tunisia, Morocco. There is 20, Algeria, 9, Egypt and Lebanon. Egypt has 9, 8 in Lebanon, Palestine has 8, and another 2 in Jordan. And looking and having a deep dive into this in this map, we found out, as you can see, that there are specific sectors that combines the majority of the clusters, which are ICT, agri-food, energy, textile and fashion, creative and digital industries, and of course there is the mechatronics and
perhaps Shahir, you can come in until Yasmin can fix her internet problems.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Shahir.
Thank you, Yasmin. You can see my screen.
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay, great. Thank you very
But
much
yeah.
for this invitation to be part of this interesting webinars. I'm happy that we'll be talking about a very important issue for South Med countries, especially from a food security perspective. So before proceeding with all the details that we're going to see from different countries, the objective of this short presentation, I think I just have 10 minutes, is to provide an overview of the agri-food sector from a value chain perspective in the South Med region. So clearly, when we talk about this, it's important to bear in mind that it's with the poly-crisis context that we have from the war in Ukraine and before the pandemic and currently the different conflicts that we have in the Middle East, food security is threatened because many countries are the most important importers of cereals among other products. So that's why in terms of its exposure to external shocks, it's becoming even more pronounced. So I will try to provide a brief overview of the agri-food value chain, then what are the main challenges, whether we do have some opportunities, and then I will conclude. So when we talk about the agri-food value chain, as I said in the beginning, it's affected by both what we call cyclical and structural challenges. Cyclical challenges, they pertain to external shocks that affect the food value chain, ranging from the inputs such as fertilizers, machines, to the products themselves or the final products that are consumed by the consumer, given that with all these external shocks, the food inflation in general increases. And for instance, in Egypt, it reached 60%. So all those cyclical factors like the war in Ukraine, like the pandemic, or the conflicts in the MENA region, they affect the value chain of agri-food. And on the other, we have some structural challenges that can affect also the food value chain, either challenges pertaining to population growth or to climate change or to the technology used in the agriculture sector. So all these challenges, they are related more to the structure of the sector itself, not just cyclical, which is the case of COVID or the war in Ukraine. So clearly, both of the two challenges, they can affect food security and consequently poverty and inequality in many countries. And this is very important because if we look at the overview of the value chain, we can see that like in other countries, but in the MENA region, or especially in the South Med countries, it's even more pronounced. So as you can see here in the graph, we have the whole value chain that starts with the input companies. And this is a key point in the value chain, given that a lot of inputs that are needed for the agriculture sector, they are imported, whether seeds or fertilizers or machines or pesticides and so on. And given that all these products are imported, it means that whenever we have any currency problem, like in the case of Tunisia or in the case of Egypt, this is fully translated into the resilience of the food value chain and therefore food security. And then once we have those input companies, they are split between, or they provide the inputs needed either by large-scale farming or by small-scale farming. And we know that in South Med countries, we have a lot of small-scale farming that rely on a rather primitive technology. And that's why this can affect their competitiveness and their competitive advantage in several agriculture sectors. And then both of the two companies, either they will sell to retailers or to wholesalers, and then given the important role of the government, which is a main buyer of such products, especially when it comes to cereals, for instance, then the government buys these products and then provides them to the final consumer. Clearly, the trade part or the value chain part will come in this wholesalers, given that, as I said, retailers in general, or especially small-scale farming, they don't have the ability to export and therefore most of the trade from the agriculture sector in South Med countries comes mainly from wholesalers that either export processed or unprocessed products and import, as I said in the beginning, the inputs needed for the food value chain, especially seeds and fertilizers. So this figure shows to what extent the value chain can be subject to a severe external shock that can affect its resilience and the availability, the access, and the quantity of goods available for final consumers. In addition to that, when we look at the value chain from a different perspective in terms of the tasks that are needed, we can see that both for upstream or downstream food value chain, it's becoming heavily dependent on services. And this is a very important point because a recent paper showed that the performance of the services sector in terms of marketing, in terms of distribution, in terms of financial services, in terms of business services, they affect significantly the competitiveness of the agri-food value chain, which therefore affects the competitiveness of exports coming from this sector. And that's why, given that most of the services in the South Med countries are regulated and protected, this affects the performance of the service sector and therefore the competitiveness of the agri-food value chain. So this brief overview of the value chain leads us to what are the main challenges that affect the agri-food value chain. So I will divide them between three main groups. The first one is related to factors of production, because we need factors of production to produce, and clearly one of the most important factors of production is water, because we know that several agricultural products are intensive in water. And as you can see on your right-hand side, water stress in the South Med countries is among the highest among developing countries, even when we compare it to Sub-Saharan Africa or to Latin America. And this shows to what extent the cultivation of some products that might be intensive in water can be affected in the medium term or in the long term because of this water stress. And this is confirmed also by the water productivity, in the sense that how much we can produce with the water that is available. And we can see that South Med countries, all of them, Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt, they are ranked below the world average, which is not the case of Algeria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Jordan, which are slightly higher than the world average. So this means that on the one hand, bearing in mind the problem of water stress and the way the water is used, we really have to think about all those new techniques of recycling water and desalination that can increase the availability of water in South Med countries. In addition to this, clearly, the share also of arable land in South Med countries also is in general below the world average. And this is especially the case for Algeria, Egypt, and Jordan, that have a very small share of arable land, which affects the likelihood of cultivating new products or sustaining the production of existing products, which means that the second factor of production is also challenged. And the third factor of production, which is needed as an input, is fertilizers. And as you can see here, for most of the Arab countries, and especially the diversified economies of the Arab region, they are all highly dependent on the imports of fertilizers. So you can see here, Morocco and Egypt are among the top importers of fertilizers in the MENA region. In addition to the factors of production, we have some challenges related to trade policy. And this in general, I will summarize them into three main challenges. The first one is tariffs, because we know that agricultural products, as you can see on your right-hand side, tariffs for the agriculture sector in general in the MENA region, and especially in South Med countries, is much higher than tariffs imposed on the manufacturing sector. This is not an exception, because it's the case in the EU, it's the case in the US, but the difference between the tariffs imposed on the primary sector and the manufacturing sector is more pronounced in several countries, especially Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt. In addition to tariffs, there is also an important impediment, which is time to trade. We know that most of the agriculture products are perishable products, and the more they wait in the customs, the more they are likely to perish, and therefore either the consumer will not be able to consume them in the case of imports, or the exporters will lose their products, because simply if, for instance, we're exporting tomatoes, and the tomatoes will wait in the Egyptian customs in order to be exported, or they will wait in the Jordanian customs, then tomatoes can perish, and therefore the exporters will not be able to export them. So that's why trade facilitation is a key issue when it comes to the food value chain. Why? Because in addition to the fact that the products themselves, they are perishable, but perishable products also, they rely on imported inputs. So if the imported inputs are not quickly released, this means that the whole value chain can be affected. So not only tariffs, but time to trade, which is very important, and is related to trade facilitation. The third challenge is related to non-tariff measures. And here, as you can see on this graph, the ad valorem equivalents, so the tariff equivalent of NTMs, whether the technical barriers to trade or the sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So for those who are not specialists of international trade, what is the rationale basically behind those measures? In general, countries, they impose measures in order to protect humans or plants or the environment. And those measures are called sanitary and phytosanitary, which are related to health problems. For instance, the use of hormones or pesticides, for instance, then the products can be banned from a certain market. Or technical barriers to trade, which are related to the technicalities of the product itself. So when we calculate the tariff equivalent of these measures, which means what would be the tariff that the government could have imposed if it uses one of these measures, we can see that they are very, very high. So they can reach up to 80%, which means that imposing such a standard can reduce imports by a tariff that is equivalent to 83%, which is very high. So far, the agriculture product is subject to a lot of technical barriers to trade and sanitary and phytosanitary measures, which at both the exporter and the importer, which means that this is going to affect the competitiveness of South Med exporters on the one hand, and also the availability of imported products in domestic markets. However, the barriers are not only related to the factors of production or to trade barriers like tariffs or time to trade or non-tariff measures. We have also some other domestic factors, because population growth presents an important challenge for the agri-food value chain, in the sense that countries that have a high population growth rate, they will have demand pressures, which is going to affect food security, or the quality of infrastructure, in the sense that in order to use a product or transport a product from the farms to the market, or from the customs to the market, and vice versa, this needs an infrastructure of good quality. And even in the customs themselves, we need an infrastructure of good quality, automated infrastructure, for instance. And the literature has shown also that the more the infrastructure helps automate the customs, the quicker the products are delivered. So that's why we have other domestic factors that can affect also the competitiveness of the agri-food value chain. So the first set of challenges are related to the factors of production, the second one related to trade policy, and the third one to other domestic issues that can affect the value chain. Despite all this, we still have some opportunities. And that's why some countries are the main exporters of some agri-food products at the world level, like citrus, which is very competitive, in both Egypt and Morocco. And this is why we can have a potential of developing regional value chains, in the sense that to what extent South Med countries it can better integrate in order to create those regional value chains within some niche products based on their competitive advantage. So if we look at the export potential map of that was developed by the International Trade Center, as you can see here, it's the case of Egypt and Morocco. So the dark part of each square or each rectangle represents the existing share of exports, and the lighter part represents the untapped potential. So as you can see, for both Egypt and Morocco, there is a huge untapped potential, either in terms of some specific product like citrus, like tomatoes, like cranberries, like potatoes or onions, and also some minerals that or chemical fertilizers that are used in the food value chain. So this means that if South Med countries can better integrate between themselves and overcome all the problems related to non-tariff measures, tariffs, and the quality of infrastructure, this can improve, this can further create some regional value chains and therefore make the food value chain a bit more resilient. But clearly, this cannot happen unless the challenges I was talking about are there, and especially those that are related to factors of production, trade, and infrastructure. So to conclude, clearly, food insecurity is a key issue in those countries, especially that they have a large share of poor people below the poverty line. So making sure that the agri-food value chain is friendly with food security and helps sustain the availability of products in these countries is a key issue. However, clearly, several policies are needed. On the one hand, to improve the quality of infrastructure between these countries on the one hand. Second, to approach non-tariff measures in a different way, in a way that helps small farmers especially comply with non-tariff measures, because as I said in the beginning, most of the small farmers, they serve the domestic markets, but they're not able to export. And also importing either seeds or machines or fertilizers is also very costly for them. So helping them adopt slightly modern technologies can help increase productivity and output, and therefore become more performant in order to export. When it comes to non-tariff measures, a key issue which is also very difficult, which is the harmonization of standards and regulations. Because there is always two schools when it comes to non-tariff measures, whether to harmonize or to adopt a mutual recognition scheme, in the sense that the exporter will recognize the standards of the importer and vice versa. There is a huge debate on that, and I think perhaps we can talk about this during the webinar. But clearly, addressing non-tariff measures to help large producers and much more small producers comply with such non-tariff measures will help increase the competitiveness of agricultural producers from South Med, and increase their competitiveness also, especially on the EU market. And finally, investing in a more automated custom to make customs procedures more automated will reduce clearly the time to trade that is needed for such products, and therefore will make them more competitive, because in one of the papers, we estimated also the tariff equivalent of waiting 1 day in the customs, and in some countries, it can go up to 25%, like Egypt and Jordan. So this was a quick overview. I hope I did not exceed my time. Thank you, Yasmin, and over to you.
Thank you, Shahir, so much. Very informative session. So even if we went a little bit beyond time, it was very enriching. And I I think we have just one remark saying that there is some sort of a pattern that we can see now from the Gulf countries where the import from the South Med countries and then start re-exporting it to Africa. And maybe this is something, as you mentioned, we can discuss later on this remark and we can give it a deep dive. So thank you for the first session. And I think Yasmin Fahim, you can take over now with our first ecosystem and opportunities. So the floor is yours, and Ali.
Thank you, Yasmin. Hello, everyone. I'm Yasmin Fahim, the Director of Research Programs at Economic Research Forum. And I'm very happy to moderate this panel, which is quite diverse in terms of geographic representation, expertise, and obviously gender balance as well. Thank you to our panelists for agreeing to join us today. And we have some questions for each of you. So I will start by presenting each of the speaker to whom I will be addressing a question. We'll go over our questions with each and every one of you, and then I'll come back with another question to each and every one of you as well. So our first distinguished speaker is Yasmin Saghirat from CIHEAM. Yasmin serves as the Gender Policy and Women and Youth Empowerment focal point. She's a graduate of Sciences Po Aix-en-Provence with a specialization in the political sociology of the Arab and Muslim world. Yasmin previously led sustainable development and CSR projects in the Maghreb, and she has also served as the project officer in the Office of the UN Under-Secretary General for Innovative Financing for Development and worked as the consultant for the French Development Agency, the AFD. Her commitment to social causes includes her role as a founding member of ATLAS, the Algerian Talent and Leaders Association, among many others. So I'll stop here. You have a very impressive bio. Thank you for joining us. And my first question to you is, what are the key challenges in the South Med agri-food sector related to food security, sustainability, and market access? And how do these issues particularly affect women and youth? And how is CIHEAM addressing these through regional initiative? Yasmin, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Yasmin. I see we are many Yasmin today. It's a good thing. So we'll try. If you don't mind, I will switch in French because we have this possibility to speak in French. Bonjour à tous. Vraiment, je suis ravie d'intervenir ce matin. Alors, le CIHEAM, je vais en dire juste un mot. C'est une organisation intergouvernementale qui existe depuis 62 ans maintenant et qui est dédiée à la coopération et au dialogue méditerranéen sur les enjeux agricoles et alimentaires. Alors, nos activités, elles sont principalement en synergie, elles sont complémentaires les unes aux autres. Elles s'appuient principalement sur de la formation, sur de la recherche, sur des activités de coopération et de développement et sur le dialogue politique. Ah, peut-être qu'on peut éteindre les micros. Donc, alors effectivement, moi je travaille au secrétariat général qui est basé à Paris, mais ensuite on a 4 instituts qui font ces activités-là d'accompagnement, de formation, de renforcement de capacité des acteurs. Et donc depuis 62 ans maintenant, on est vraiment un observateur de premier niveau de l'évolution des mondes agricoles et ruraux en Méditerranée et on essaye de faire évoluer nos activités pour accélérer les transitions aujourd'hui qui sont nécessaires. Alors, très rapidement, je vais pas revenir sur les défis qui ont été très bien présentés par M. Zaki tout à l'heure, mais schématisé, on peut dire que beaucoup de voyants sont au rouge et que dans la situation méditerranéenne aujourd'hui, on peut même parler d'une tempête parfaite, perfect storm. Les choses s'alignent du point de vue environnemental, socio-économique, politique, et le résultat est assez inquiétant.
Yasmin, excuse me. Can please, may I ask all the other panelists to mute themselves? Thank you so much. Yasmin, please go ahead.
Merci, merci. Donc, je disais qu'on est dans une situation de tempête parfaite un petit peu dans la Méditerranée, qui aujourd'hui nous pousse à être beaucoup plus vigilants et les transitions doivent être plus rapides et c'est ce que le CIAM essaye de faire à travers ses activités. Je rappelle juste que la région méditerranéenne, en particulier la rive sud et est, sont parmi les plus exposées au changement climatique. C'est un hotspot mondial du changement climatique et que l'agriculture, qui reste quand même une activité fondamentale dans la région, est le secteur le plus climato-dépendant qui soit. Donc, vagues de chaleur, de froid, inondations, voilà, ces phénomènes extrêmes qui s'accélèrent, qui s'aggravent, ont une influence énorme sur l'agriculture et sur nos systèmes alimentaires. Je ne vais pas revenir sur la problématique de l'eau, ça a été dit dans le détail, mais on représente plus de la moitié de la population dont on appelle pauvre en eau, avec des très fortes inégalités entre la rive nord et la rive sud et des tensions qui vont accélérer sur les ressources. Les sols aussi, qui sont en raison de pratiques agricoles intensives, d'eau durable, utilisation massive de produits chimiques, d'engrais, bien sûr, vont conduire à l'érosion des sols, la salinisation des sols qui sont complètement appauvris. Aujourd'hui, on parle de désertification dans des pays comme Malte, par exemple, ou l'Espagne, et ce qui est en train d'alerter les décideurs politiques. Donc, tous ces éléments-là mis ensemble porte préjudice à l'agriculture, au système alimentaire. Ça, c'est sans évoquer les situations comme on a au conflit, les conflits par exemple comme au Liban. Aujourd'hui, avec l'agression israélienne, on estime qu'on est à 60-68% des terres cultivées au Liban qui sont totalement détruites. Les bombes au phosphore ont provoqué des incendies généralisés qui ont détruit les ressources naturelles, les infrastructures aussi, et qui poussent aussi les populations à se déplacer. Donc, dans ce contexte-là, on est dans une situation où les pays de la rive sud ne peuvent pas être autosuffisants, même si parfois il y a sur certains produits une possibilité, mais les complémentarités sont indispensables et surtout l'importation est quasiment obligatoire. Enfin, les pays de la rive sud sont des forts importateurs de céréales, de lait en poudre, de sucre. Et tous ces éléments-là, ils se conjuguent dans un contexte où on a une région où la population, elle a triplé en très peu d'années. Alors, on est passé en 30 ans de 281 millions de personnes en 1970 à 472 millions de personnes en 2010. Et donc, les besoins ont fortement augmenté, des besoins qui ont augmenté, enfin une demande qui est plus importante, mais aussi en termes de nourriture. Aujourd'hui, on s'alimente, la mondialisation fait qu'on a des régimes occidentalisés et que les besoins en viande, en produits sucrés ont beaucoup augmenté. Donc, je ne vais pas revenir sur l'accès au marché parce que ça l'a été aussi dit et que je préfère qu'on ait ensuite un moment pour discuter. Donc, tous ces ensembles-là, tous ces défis-là mis ensemble, ils ont vraiment un impact sur les systèmes alimentaires, sur l'agriculture et quelque part aussi sur la lutte contre la pauvreté rurale, puisque dans ce contexte-là, je rappelle que depuis des années, l'exode rural continue, elle s'aggrave, viennent nourrir ces flux migratoires d'abord dans les villes qui peuvent souvent ne pas absorber ces nouveaux arrivants et ensuite dans un second temps entre les pays avec parfois les drames qu'on connaît sur les routes des migrants et parfois aussi des pressions sur les ressources quand on pense à des pays comme le Liban ou la Jordanie qui accueillent des millions de Syriens ou de Palestiniens, il y a des pressions sur les ressources qui aujourd'hui génèrent toute une série de tensions. Donc vraiment c'est un alignement qui est assez alarmant et aujourd'hui toutes ces questions-là, tous ces défis-là, ils vont impacter directement, beaucoup plus directement les femmes et les jeunes. Elles sont, on le sait, les femmes victimes, les premières victimes du changement climatique, des effets du changement climatique, de la pauvreté, des tensions et des conflits quand il y en a, parce que elles travaillent souvent dans l'invisibilité. Elles sont beaucoup dans l'informel. Le travail n'est pas rémunéré, pas valorisé. Souvent, elles-mêmes se considèrent pas comme des travailleuses. Elles estiment qu'elles accompagnent le mari ou qu'elles accompagnent le travail. Et elles s'identifient pas elles-mêmes comme des agricultrices. entreprises, elles ont, on le sait, beaucoup moins accès au foncier. On a très peu de propriétaires terriennes, même si elles sont très impliquées dans la production agricole et tout le long de la chaîne de valeur. Très peu accès aux formations, très peu accès au financement. Donc tout ça les précarise davantage et finalement les transitions qui doivent se faire pour plus de durabilité, inclure les nouvelles technologies pour faire face à tous ces enjeux-là, elles vont passer à côté de ça parce qu'elles n'en bénéficient pas directement. Du côté des jeunes, c'est pas mieux non plus, puisque les jeunes, aujourd'hui, le travail dans le monde agricole et dans le secteur agroalimentaire, il ne séduit pas. Ces métiers sont associés à de la pénibilité, alors à raison, ils sont associés à de l'informel, ils sont associés à une non-valorisation. Aujourd'hui, ça ne fait pas rêver les jeunes de travailler dans l'agriculture, de reprendre l'exploitation familiale. Et aujourd'hui, l'âge moyen des agriculteurs, il est de 55 ans, 57 ans, sans renouvellement générationnel. Et ce qui est paradoxal, c'est qu'à côté de ça, donc on a des secteurs agroalimentaires qui sont vraiment sous pression, qui ont vraiment du mal à recruter les jeunes et les jeunes talents, à créer des vocations autour du fait de produire et de se nourrir. Et à côté de ça, dans nos pays de la rive sud, on a quand même un paradoxe qui est qu'on a le taux de chômage de jeunes et de femmes le plus important au monde et des diplômés. Et c'est quelque chose qui est vraiment intéressant à mettre en perspective. Alors, comment le CIAM, il essaye de répondre à ces...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you conclude in like 30 seconds?
Oui.
Come back to again, so you'll have...
Yeah, for sure. Donc, à travers les activités qu'on développe, on mise principalement sur des formations, sur les innovations, les compétences vertes et l'entrepreneuriat social. Aujourd'hui, on a des masters en open innovation et entrepreneuriat vert qu'on co-développe avec des entreprises justement pour que qu'on puisse répondre le plus vite possible et le mieux possible et de manière la plus ancrée possible aux défis que peuvent rencontrer les entreprises dans l'agroalimentaire, mais aussi aux besoins aujourd'hui qui émanent de cette jeunesse méditerranéenne qui a envie d'entreprendre et d'apporter sa touche. Sinon, juste un exemple aussi, on a tout récemment lancé au CIAM un prix innovation des jeunes pour l'agroalimentaire et on a reçu 60 candidatures et d'ailleurs on l'a fait avec un partenaire qui est BusinessMed. Je vois que Mahdi Khamsi, il est dans le panel et donc ce prix innovation du CIAM, donc on a reçu 60 candidatures et avec 60 projets vraiment extraordinaires. Le premier qui a reçu le prix, c'est une plateforme d'énergie renouvelable qui est mise en service, qui va utiliser l'IA pour permettre aux petits agriculteurs d'adopter des pratiques durables. On a une autre start-up qui utilise l'IA pour éliminer les mauvaises herbes avec un laser, donc on évite les herbicides. Voilà, on a toute une série. Donc il y a un vrai potentiel aujourd'hui de cette jeunesse méditerranéenne via l'entrepreneuriat que le CIAM essaye d'accompagner. Voilà.
Merci, Yasmine. Thank you very much for sharing this very valuable information, and I'm happy to see the potential, even though the current situation is maybe not very attractive for young people, given the average age of farmers that you've mentioned, which is 50 to 55 years old, and how unattractive the sector might be for the young people. But thanks to contributions like yours and others working together, I'm sure with innovation, social entrepreneurship, and green entrepreneurship, this trend will possibly be reversed. Thank you. I'm going to be now moving to our second distinguished speaker, Mr. Rami Boujouda. Rami is the Chief Operating Officer at Beritech, leading business development for startups and SMEs since 2014. He manages the ACT Smart Innovation Hub for AgTech and Cleantech, and the Regional Innovation Hub for the Water and Energy for Food Challenge in the MENA region. Rami has held senior roles in change management and operations across 3 continents. And he holds a degree in agriculture engineering from AUB and a master's in business management. He is a passionate person about sustainable agriculture, which is one of the reasons why we're very happy he's able to join us today. And I wanted to ask Rami, Beritech plays a crucial role in developing agri-food clusters in South Med and the MENA region. So my question is, what strategies does Beritech employ to strategize this work with clusters, and how does the organization ensure effective collaboration between different stakeholders within the agri-food ecosystem to improve the outcomes in terms of productivity, market competitiveness, and so on. Rami, the floor is yours.
Sure. Yasmin, thank you so much. A pleasure to be on this series and to be able to contribute a bit of the work that we've been doing. As it was mentioned by the fellow panelists before, there's a lot happening, a lot that needs to happen in the Mediterranean. So to give you a bit of our experience at Beritech and how we started working on supporting clusters, innovative clusters in the space of agri-food. So as it was mentioned in the many challenges that were identified, we realized that there is a big need to make sure that we start building a more resilient, more competitive, and a more collaborative ecosystem to support innovations in the agri-food space. So back in 2016, we started designing a program where we can link up a lot of those activities together. So we launched our AgriTech Accelerator, which is an accelerator for agri-food innovations in tech, engineering, science, and business models. But at the same time, we said if we want to really play a role in strengthening that in the country and in the region, we need to work more with the companies that are already established. So here we took the model of the Netherlands. I have something called Food Valley. It's one of the leading clusters in the world. And we started working with them on building capacity building for our local stakeholders, localizing it to the needs, the maturity, and the effectiveness of collaboration in Lebanon. So what we started to do is that we started with a small group of like-minded people across the value chain. So we've had people in agro-processing, we've had people in inputs, we've had people into distribution, we've had people into facilities that could help. We've had agricultural companies. So we brought in private sector players together, about 20 people, and we decided with them to start working on building that culture of collaboration. So we started meeting at each of the premises of those partners. We started visiting each other. We started building capacity, and from that nucleus of 20 to 30 companies, we picked up a board that would help on building that capacity. What we've done at Beritech is that we provided funding, we provided the administration and management of this activity to make sure that we build something strong, but driven by the members. At the heart of this strategy, we decided to make sure that we have several areas that should be there at the core so that this cluster could grow and make the impact that we want. So we put in collaboration on research. So we started funding activities where we had people from the similar sectors or state of the value chain where we could help them collaborate together on taking a challenge to academia, to research, and to our startups that we're building and push those challenges into the market, making sure that we answer the needs of a particular group and not necessarily a particular company. So that created some way to be able to push innovation at the level of the group and so on. The second one that we started working on is on ensuring that there's collaborative efforts. So whenever we visited a company, they were opening up about one challenge that another industry could happen. And with all the challenges, as Yasmin mentioned, that Lebanon passed through, even with the last thing, it has been 5 years that Lebanon has been passing through difficult times. The need and the interest in collaborating had become a very interesting thing. And people in different sectors in the value chain were able to answer and reflect on the pain points of others to be able to open on them. Another thing that we focused on is the importance of networking and partnerships. And that could move from anything from shared resources to collaboration, to sharing inputs, to having collaboration on supply chain, material, resources, expertise, and so on. So the networking component was very important, and that helped us scale the support that we have to them on the export market. So we were able, by building on these networks and partnerships, be able to conduct missions or attract buyers to Lebanon to be able to identify how can they support each other. And that could be all the way from, bringing together multiple suppliers to one buyer, or coordinating on shipments for a certain country with different players and so on. One additional component is giving them access to funding through different activities where they could play a role in accessing support funds, whether it's technical assistance, grants for machineries, grants for research and development. So giving them access and information to whatever is happening outside to be able to get there. Now, in order to get all of this working, there has been also a need to play a role in terms of policy advocacy and policy push, and being able to play a lobbying role. So that has been a role that the cluster has been able to play in order to push forward some efforts on tariffs, on export facilitation, on collaboration between multiple governmental organizations with the private sector. And today the cluster have about 130 members, mostly medium-sized enterprises, with few small innovative ones and larger ones. We've worked with the cluster also to attract and involve a lot of the successful startups that were supported through Beritech, so that they have a network of businesses that could buy their services and grow. And that was a good way to generate sustainability also for the startups to be able to grow, ensure that the big ones and the medium ones are able to collaborate all together and be able to create a lot of value through those types of collaboration. Back to you, Yasmin. You're on mute.
Thank you, Rami. Very insightful information, and I see you do a lot of different support type services and activities for the companies and the clusters, and it's very, very commendable and quite an interesting take. And now we're going to move into our next panelist, Mr. Murad Bouatou, who is the president of the beverage cluster Agro-Logistique, with over 30 years of experience in local development, project management, and fostering competitiveness of clusters. Since 2012, he has contributed to the creation and promotion of clusters in Algeria and the Maghreb region, focusing on value chain integration in sectors like beverage, milk, and olive oil. He's an expert consultant. He has collaborated with organizations such as the GIZ, the ECCP, and ANIMA, providing strategic diagnostics and workshops on local economic development. He's also an expert member of the FILA Foundation, promoting agro-industrial integration and innovation ecosystems, among many others. Mr. Murad, we'd like to ask you, given your expertise in this area, what strategies or innovations has Cluster Boisson Agro-Logistique implemented to strengthen local agri-food value chains and enhance their competitiveness in the Mediterranean region? Mr. Murad, the floor is yours.
Merci, Madame Fahim. Je vous remercie pour cette présentation très élogieuse à mon égard. Voilà. Bon, j'aurais pu parler en anglais, mais en français, je suis plus à l'aise. Donc, maintenant, avant d'aborder cette question rapidement, très pertinente, pour présenter, permettez-moi de donner un très bref aperçu du contexte qui a présidé à la création du cluster, sans être trop lent. Donc, une task force a été initiée en 2012, qui a vu la création du premier cluster boisson, tout court, et puis qui a intégré son écosystème agro-logistique. Tout ça dans une stratégie, bien sûr, de mutualiser les moyens. Maintenant, une réflexion, bien sûr, profonde a été engagée pour collaborer étroitement avec les autres clusters. Je jouais un rôle, si vous voulez, d'incubateur de clusters. Il y a donc des clusters. Je parlerai de l'agroalimentaire. On peut citer le cluster des plantes aromatiques, des huiles essentielles, le cluster des énergies renouvelables qui, comme vous le savez, a un très grand rôle à jouer dans les performances de l'agriculture. Et donc, dans ce contexte, donc, nous avons identifié pour accompagner donc ces clusters, enfin ces nouveaux clusters, et un des objectifs, c'était quoi? C'était de créer des passerelles, des synergies entre différents clusters et leur écosystème pour identifier des objectifs, des projets communs. Enfin, je soulignais ça pour dire que pour recontextualiser le rôle donc du cluster dans une dynamique d'intégration des chaînes de valeur, puisque nous avons un potentiel très riche dans l'agroalimentaire, donc quand même un pays continent donc qui va du sud au nord, et nous avons donc des clusters comme donc ceux que je viens de citer. Aussi, pour revenir maintenant, c'était en guise d'introduction, hein, établir le contexte dans lequel notre stratégie est liée à une profonde mutation qui vise à implanter donc ce concept innovant de cluster par la mise en place d'un cadre structurel de développement d'un nouveau paradigme qui va donc mutualiser et introduire cette culture participative qui est très importante. Voilà. Maintenant, pour revenir à la stratégie du cluster boisson, et pas seulement le cluster boisson, puisque maintenant, j'ai aussi la casquette de l'interclustering, c'est très important de reconfigurer donc cette stratégie dans les réseaux de clusters, pas seulement que le cluster boisson, puisque les autres clusters, comme celui des huiles essentielles, qui constituent l'amont de la chaîne de valeur, et aussi la logistique, qui est transversale, ainsi que le cluster numérique, qui vise à digitaliser nos activités. Voilà. Maintenant, pour exposer les guidelines, les lignes directrices donc, de cette stratégie, je mettrai le focus sur les éléments structurants de cette stratégie dans le contexte de notre intégration chaîne de valeur méditerranéenne. D'accord? Donc, notre stratégie donc, est déclinée sur des filières très, très porteuses qui sont à valeur ajoutée. Pardon, par exemple, je citerai la filière oléicole. Comme vous savez, le bassin méditerranéen, c'est l'olive oil qui vise à développer des concepts ce qu'on appelle de culture semi-intensive, puisque l'Algérie, traditionnellement, est riche, comme les pays voisins, en potentiel oléicole. Donc, nous avons donc aidé les grandes entreprises. Il y a des entreprises du cluster boisson, mais qui ont des filiales dans l'oléiculture. C'est des grands groupes. Hein. Et donc, nous avons accompagné ces grands groupes pour passer d'un mode de culture traditionnelle, où il y a par exemple 112 arbres à hectare, à un mode de culture semi-intensif. Donc, en introduisant des nouvelles technologies, comme le goutte à goutte, et d'une assistance, donc d'un système de production assisté par ordinateur. Donc, pour parler aussi du deuxième axe très important, donc qui concerne le potentiel méditerranéen, je parlerai de la valorisation du patrimoine floral et du patrimoine forestier. Notre pays est très riche en forêt et qui va amener des porteurs de projets innovants. C'est aussi un autre rôle que nous accompagnons les startups, comme par exemple la valorisation des huiles essentielles. L'Algérie était traditionnellement exportatrice de ces huiles essentielles, dans les cosmétiques par exemple, comme Chanel 5, etc., des grandes marques, sans les citer. Donc, ce cluster-là est vraiment créé des synergies avec les inputs, la chaîne de valeur de la culture boisson, de la filière boisson, puisque notre stratégie vise à remonter ces chaînes de valeur et les inputs, c'est les concentrés de fruits, c'est les huiles essentielles, c'est les arômes que nous utilisons dans la fabrication, notamment la transformation, que ce soit dans les boissons ou la cosmétologie. Là, je pense.
Mr. Mourad, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you please conclude in 1 minute? And then we'll come back to...
D'accord. Là, ce que je voulais dire, qu'il y a incontestablement des niches de marché pour encourager leur compétitivité et les synergies fertiles dans la Méditerranée. Donc, pour conclure, moi, je pense que il y a donc des défis, un enjeu, premièrement, pour progresser dans la chaîne de valeur, un changement aussi structurel pour aller vers l'économie du savoir. Donc, la digitalisation est, comme l'a souligné notre collègue précédemment, utilisée dans l'agriculture intelligence, l'intelligence artificielle. Et là, on a des startups vraiment qui aident les agriculteurs et aussi implémenter de l'énergie solaire dans les régions plus ou moins arides, par exemple dans le sud. Et moi, je pense que là, il y a une culture de l'échange entre des pays méditerranéens dans le domaine du management de la supply chain. Je conclurai en disant que nous avons introduit cette digitalisation des entreprises, notamment pour optimiser les coûts du fret. Et là, nous avons donc, on va vers une bourse du fret pour encourager et pourquoi pas interconnecter les autres pays de la rive sud. J'ai aussi fait un pitch il y a quelques années, présenté un pitch qui a été présélectionné, qu'on a appelé e-incubateur agritech. Parce que c'est important de vulgariser ces plateformes numériques pour interconnecter, être compétitif et faire des économies d'échelle. Et je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. Murad, and very interesting interpretation of how to integrate clusters in this sector and the agri-food sector in general in the value chains, and of course the role of digitization that you mentioned at the end, and the smart agriculture could be catalyst for this integration in this region. Now, I thank you, and I move into our next speaker, Laila Dougi Ben Salem. Hello, Laila. Laila holds a master's degree in food industry and an engineering degree in food industry, both earned with distinction. She is the chef des services innovation et transfert de technologie at the pôle de compétitivité de Bizerte. She has over a decade of expertise in innovation and technology transfer within Tunisia's agri-food sector. Laila, given your expertise in this area, can you highlight a key initiative by the Pôle de Compétitivité de Bizerte that has successfully fostered innovation in Tunisia's agri-food sector? Laila, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to present our structure, the competitiveness pole of Bizerta. So I chose to present in French.
Yes, please go ahead. We have simultaneous interpretation, so you can speak in French.
Okay. Donc, vous voyez mon écran?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Donc, voilà, donc, je vous présente un peu notre structure, le pôle de compétitivité de Bizerte. Donc, c'est une structure d'appui à l'innovation et à la recherche-innovation dans le secteur agroalimentaire. Donc, juste un bref aperçu sur la création des pôles en Tunisie, donc de la part la loi de 2001, qui définit un peu c'est quoi un pôle de compétitivité, donc ce qui est un ensemble d'espaces technologiques et industriels qui regroupe un technopôle, des zones d'activité industrielle multisectorielle et un réseau de partenaires de recherche, de formation et de production. Donc, une technopole en Tunisie donc, est définie par la loi par l'ensemble de trois composantes intégrées. Donc, un espace qui est dédié à des activités de formation, de production, de recherche dans une spécialité donnée. Pour notre cas, c'est le secteur agroalimentaire. Une zone d'appui multisectorielle et un réseau de partenaires. Alors, Bizerte, pourquoi donc le pôle, il est donc basé, donc la société de gestion et les deux zones, l'une multisectorielle et l'autre spécialisée, sont basées à Bizerte. Donc la région de Bizerte contient le point le plus septentrional et du continent africain. C'est un point de connexion pour les investissements sur les énormes marchés d'Europe du Sud et d'Afrique subsaharienne, avec 600 000 pour la population. Donc, Bizerte, c'est une région agricole et industrielle de premier ordre avec une production, elle détient 45% de la production nationale en artichauts, 12% de la production nationale pour les produits laitiers, 20% pour les légumineuses, 17% pour la pomme de terre, 12% pour les céréales, donc aussi, et 6% pour les produits de la mer. Alors, la société de gestion de la Technopole, donc, c'est une société à partenariat public-privé créée en 2006 avec un capital de 10 000 millions de dinars. Avec des principaux actionnaires, ce sont des banques privées. 33 pour l'employabilité, donc la société de gestion, donc il y a 33 employés, donc 15 cadres supérieurs. Les composantes donc, de notre technopole, donc, comme je vous ai dit, donc, un technopole qui est structuré en 4 cellules, en des cellules distinctes principalement qui offrent des services de veille, d'innovation et de formation. Avec adossé à un réseau de partenaires nationaux et internationaux, donc avec des pôles de compétitivité, des universités, des écoles nationales d'ingénieurs, etc. Et avec une zone d'appui multisectorielle de 66 hectares, donc qui est à 5 km de la société de gestion, et une autre zone d'appui, elle est en cours de finalisation. Voilà, donc ici, vous voyez un peu la technopole avec ses différentes composantes. Ici, l'espace industriel, l'Asie. Donc, le Technopole offre des services, comme je vous ai dit, de formation à haute valeur ajoutée, donc la formation, la veille stratégique et l'innovation et le transfert de technologie. Ce sont nos principales grandes missions. Donc, pour la formation, on a démarré avec un master professionnel en management agroalimentaire en partenariat international avec l'Institut agronomique méditerranéen de Montpellier. 4 promotions ont eu, donc, se sont réalisées. Pour la veille, donc vraiment, on a un grand projet pour la mise en place d'une information pertinente pour tous les intervenants du secteur agroalimentaire, entreprises, chercheurs, start-up, en vue de promouvoir et de faire un saut et voilà, et augmenter la valeur ajoutée du secteur agroalimentaire par rapport donc au potentiel, par rapport à notre économie tunisienne. Et voilà la cellule d'innovation de transfert de technologie. Donc, la principale mission assignée à cette cellule, c'est d'accompagner les entreprises dans des thématiques innovantes, faire le pont entre la recherche et l'industrie à travers des actions pilotes telles que le marketing des résultats de recherche, donc l'organisation de concours innovants à travers nos différents donc, projets collaboratifs tels que le grand projet Lactimate auquel le pôle il a participé avec Anima donc pour la valorisation des produits typiques laitiers méditerranéens. On a aussi préparé, donc on a organisé un grand colloque international pour la filière céréalière en 2018. Les projets collaboratifs menés par le PCB, donc principalement donc le pôle de Bizerte, c'est donc comme je vous ai parlé, donc le produit phare, notre projet phare Lactimate. Aussi dans la filière des produits de la mer, on a pu regrouper les producteurs de huîtres de huîtres et de moules qui sont basés ici à Bizerte à travers une forme d'organisation donc de la chaîne de valeur des huîtres et des moules. On a donc sollicité l'appui de bailleurs de fonds tels que la GIZ, de l'OIT, etc. Sur le volet donc formation et employabilité, donc on a des collaborations très encourageantes dans notre écosystème ici à Bizerte qui sont très promoteuses. Nous continuerons la collaboration sur un grand projet pour
Laila, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you please conclude in a minute?
Ah, une minute. Donc, les filières développées, donc c'est le projet de structuration et de développement de la filière d'artichaut dans le gouvernorat de Bizerte. Le projet arrive à sa phase de finalisation. Donc, la Tunisie occupe le deuxième producteur mondial avec une part de 2% de la production agricole. Donc, d'où le rôle de la Tunisie et spécialement ici à Bizerte. Donc, on a un fort potentiel de développement de cette filière et des résultats très encourageants. Donc, voilà, donc les objectifs, c'est de renforcer les capacités des membres et maîtrise des bonnes pratiques, favoriser la transformation des produits, mettre en place un label. Donc, une étude de marché a été élaborée pour ceux qui sont
لا
intéressés.
بسمع حاجة بس مش مشكلة قول لي.
Leur
لا لا
envoyer
قول لي
un résumé. Donc, on
اشمعنى.
a aussi le projet, on a mis en place.
Laila,
Oui.
excuse me. Could please everybody who's a panelist mute yourself so that Laila can continue her presentation uninterrupted? Thank you.
Thank you.
Laila, go ahead.
On a aussi un grand projet, on a mis en place un centre de compétences en industrie 4.0 appliqué au secteur agroalimentaire qui arrive aussi à sa fin avec la GIZ. Donc, jusque-là, nous avons des résultats très promoteurs avec 800 personnes sensibilisées, 100 personnes formées, 75 entreprises diagnostiquées, 30 entreprises accompagnées. Voilà, d'autres filières aussi, comme je vous ai dit, le lait ont été travaillés donc ici à Bizerte, aussi la chaîne de valeur des produits de la mer. Donc, pour conclure, je vois qu'il y a un fort potentiel de développement pour ici la Technopole de Bizerte pour la filière artichaut principalement, puisque nous avons des résultats très promoteurs, et aussi sur l'axe transversal, digitalisation tout ce qui est digitalisation des pratiques agricoles, donc tout ce qui est numérisation. Je vois que c'est une opportunité aujourd'hui pour la filière agricole pour faire son plein essor. Et aussi, il faut encourager aussi la création de startups innovantes dans ce sens. Donc, faire vraiment un travail transversal principalement par exemple, on peut choisir une filière promoteuse et travailler là-dessus avec la numérisation, etc. Et la création de startups. Et je vous remercie pour cette occasion.
Merci, Laila. That's very informative and such an interesting, unique experience. Very valuable lessons to learn. May I ask you to please stop sharing your screen?
I shared my screen?
No, stop sharing. Thank you very much.
Stop.
Thank
Okay.
you. With this, we reached engineer Anwar Hilal Haddad, who's our last speaker for this panel. He's a Jordanian agricultural expert with a master's in agricultural economics from the University of Jordan. He's the chairman of the Jordan Dates Association and has consulted on marketing systems in Saudi Arabia as well. In 2022, he won the Khalifa International Award for Influential Figure in Date Palm and Agricultural Innovation. Engineer Haddad has authored several publications in date palm cultivation and marketing, contributing significantly to the sector's growth in Jordan. Mr. Anwar, thank you for joining us today. And we would like to ask you, what are the main opportunities for establishing a successful agri-food cluster in Jordan? And how can they contribute to regional value chains? And how can international partnerships such as the EU programs like PRIMA support the development of the cluster? Thank you, and the floor is yours. Engineer Anwar, you're muted. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Yasmin. It seems that we are in a garden of Yasmin today. So thank you for this opportunity, and it's my pleasure to answer your question, which is related to the cluster opportunities in Jordan. We don't have much clusters in Jordan, and actually, I don't know why we don't have this type of grouping or cooperation or integration in the agricultural sector. But I can, when I learn more about clusters, when I discuss the policies and the objectives of those clusters, I found that our association, Judah, Jordan Dates Association, in a way or another, it works sometimes as a cluster because we have a lot of farmers, we have a lot of also companies working on providing the inputs needed for the sector, as well as we have a lot of people who are working with us on marketing and on the final produce, even in manufacturing and the processing. So that's why I encouraged, and I want to now talk about how much there is an opportunity to enhance and to improve the clusters in the country. The holdings is very small, and this is an opportunity to help small and medium farmers or even stakeholders to get in together and to collaborate and even to integrate to improve their business. The productivity in kind, we don't have much specialized productivity in kind. Like, for example, we have the dates, which is a big sector, 20% of the area. Jordan Valley is dates. But when we are talking about other crops, we have less area. But this will, the clustering also will improve in specialization, more specialization in the cluster. Improving the opportunities, yes, there is a huge opportunities to improve also the quality. This is a need, this is a requirement. And I think that the type of cluster and the way it works, it will help in improving the quality, as well as it will improve or reduce or cutting costs for the farmers, which is very important. All of these things will work together to raise the competitiveness of the production in either in the local or in the regional or in the global market. Those opportunities is over there, and I think we need the type of help like what PRIMA is doing nowadays. We need this type of collaboration. We think that also that the cluster will provide the raw materials and the inputs at the proper time in a regional way, in a regional matter, in along the chain, the value chain in the country. Also, it may work on improving the technical among the farming system, because the information and the database will be more distributed, will be working as a group, as a group of farmers, a group of stakeholders actually together. Even it will improve the certification, it will improve the quality for and even the standards, which is very important among the export or even among the value chain. So I think there is a huge opportunities, there is a potential, and fortunately, we were working during the last 6 months. We are working at our association to change some legal and legalization actually of partnership and adding more stakeholders along the value chain. For example, we are trying to add people who are working in the inputs. We are working to add people in the marketing. We are working to add people on the services like packaging, packing. We are working also together with them, with the universities, with the Faculty of Agriculture in the University of Jordan, in other 2 universities in Jordan, as well as the research center, which is the NARC, which is the National Research Center for Jordan. So we have an MOU actually. In a way or another, we are working as a cluster in the agriculture, but very specific in dates. I was running the CEO. I was running the Jordan Exporters Association for 10 years, and I think there is a huge opportunity also on the other sectors of agriculture, like fresh fruits and vegetables. Yes,
Mr. Anwar, I'm sorry to interrupt you. May I ask you to conclude, please? Because you're 10 minutes late. Thank you.
Yes, I think the clustering will, as I said, will improve the export opportunities, the quality. It will raise the trust between consumers and producers all over the region. It will raise the food safety, as well as we need actually. I think it will enhance the contracting system along the value chain. We need also some training and awareness about this program. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Engineer Anwar Haddad, for sharing with us your experience in Jordan, specifically in the dates sector, which is quite a significant sector in Jordan, and for sharing all the efforts that are being undertaken, and also your suggestions for how to enhance this this form of cooperation that is more of a cluster in practice, maybe not in name. So I'm afraid we ran out of time. Yeah, I had a lot of more questions for our panelists, so maybe I'll keep those for the Q&A section of the webinar. And I give the floor back to Yasmin Orabi to take us forward to the next session. So I just want to thank all our panelists for their intervention, and it was a pleasure having you. Over to you, Yasmin.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, and thanks to the panelists. I think it's a very interesting session. where we heard more about the enablers, the problems that agri-food sector overall faces, in addition to hearing from the clusters about the value chain and how we can increase and enhance the competitiveness. Even hearing from Engineer Arwar as a potential cluster, it was very informative. And I think we're safe to move directly to the second panel with Dr. Amr Khafagi. Amr, the floor will be yours to moderate the second panel, where we'll be discussing how to strengthening the value chain of agri-food sector and export opportunities, how we can dive into them. So, Amr, without any further presentations or introductions, please, the floor is yours to moderate the second panel.
Thank you very much, Yasmin. I'm very happy to be here and to moderate this second panel on strengthening value chains and export opportunities. We gladly have very great speakers today who will bring policy, research, and practice experiences that will help us, I'm sure, to further understand how to improve the resilience and competitiveness of the agri-food value chain in the Mediterranean. We have four great speakers. We have Fatma Abdelaziz from International Food Policy Research Institute from IFPRI, and Donatella Saccone from the University of Gastronomic Sciences, and Mahdi Khomsi from Business Med, and Jennifer Smulak from FAO, from the Food and Agricultural Organization. If I can start with introducing our first speaker and then ask some questions. Our first speaker is Fatma Abdelaziz from IFPRI. She's the Senior Research Associate in the Development Strategies and Governance Unit. She currently leads the USAID-funded research project on cluster-based development in Egypt. She also manages the IFPRI's Egypt Seminar Series, which features research-based policy dialogues that aim to identify and provide evidence-based policy solutions in Egypt. Before IFPRI, Fatma worked as a consultant with the UNDP and PricewaterhouseCoopers. Her research interests include public policy and development economics, especially focusing on cluster-based development. Fatma holds an MSc in Public Policy and Administration from LSE, from London School of Economics, and a Bachelor in Economics from the American University. Welcome, Fatma. I'm very happy to have you here. Thank you. My questions, Fatma, for you. From your experience, how can the South Med Agri-Food Cluster better harness local knowledge and innovation to enhance the value chains, particularly to improve smallholder farmers' productivity and competitiveness? And also how agri-food clusters in the South Med region can balance the need for economic growth with ensuring food security and inclusivity, especially for rural communities? The floor is yours, Fatma.
All right, thank you so much. So I'll first address the first question, which is how can clusters harness local knowledge and innovation? And I would have to say that this is a cluster by definition. So basically, a key feature of clusters is that people are in proximity to one another. Hence, knowledge spillover is very likely to happen, right? So knowledge is in the air. We're all working in the same place, in the same geographical area. It's inevitable that if someone catches a new innovation, that the next morning someone else will take it on. So in many of the cluster examples shared by our colleagues across the region, the majority started by relying on existing strengths. If you go into the historical roots of most of the examples shared today, the clusters do take advantage of the abundant labor in the villages. They took advantage of the social trust that is existing and embedded in these villages. And they were able, in one way or another, to overcome, at least the successful ones, they were able to overcome some of the limiting factors, such as credit constraints and the lack of the developed formal institutions. So I would have to say that, again, innovation in the successful cluster examples, innovation took place nonetheless. And again, the idea that the production process is divided into many incremental steps, by default, again, it lowers also the capital entry barriers and the educational kind of entry barriers, because I'm taking on a specific task, I'm very focused on it, and I just want to innovate. So for innovation to flow as well, it's very important that the cluster grows. So again, if we're here talking about a stagnant cluster, one that does not have a lot of market orders, there's no demand for what it's producing, then by default innovation will take hold. And again, the cluster will not survive. Information flow also will be easier with some of the examples shared, such as digital intervention. So if by chance one farmer adopts a technology, in the future more will adopt it. Digitalization here can come in and help. Again, we do not expect to observe magnificent impacts in the short run, but in the long run, adoption is likely to happen within the social networks. Governments, they do have a role to play for sure. One is, if there is a good practice that the government can identify locally within a cluster that seems to be functioning well, then maybe they can take that on and see how they can scale it up. The government can support by, for example, similar to China's experiences, by like building up factories, industry parks nearby where the productivity is taking place. Again, this can help innovation to foster, build the necessary roller roads, infrastructure, all of that. So all of these may necessarily not directly intervene in the working of the cluster, but just to ensure that there's sort of business can take place in this place. But then to answer your second question, your question is how can agri-food clusters balance the need for economic growth, but at the same time ensure food security and inclusivity? And again, more or less, I may reiterate a part that due to the low entry barriers, all farmers can enter, inclusive by definition, right? It doesn't cost you much to just join a cluster if I'm producing whatever I am in the value chain, whether I'm at the processing part or I'm just a producer. Again, there's room for me, there's a place for me. So it's inclusive, and that's why it's good for employment, specifically in developing countries. So in the essence, in the case scenario that a cluster is doing well, then by default, again, the equation means that there's a lot of employment opportunities because the value chain is getting bigger. People will get more income. And if people get more income, this means that they can diversify their food baskets, right? So now I can afford to buy something from my neighbor, instead of only relying on what I'm producing on my parcel of land, being a self-sufficient farmer where I'm only eating 1 or 2 or 3 crops at maximum. Now I'm having more money because I joined this cluster. I will be afford to go to the market and buy from my colleagues and from my neighboring markets. So if a cluster is doing well, the equation is most people within the cluster will experience an increase in income. An increase in income means a diversification of food basket. That's a very good equation. But then I would say the real question here is, what if a cluster is not doing well, which is like the majority of what we're talking about here. Clusters are stagnant in the region. Namely, if the market is not enough. So if you're producing something that doesn't really have demand, then by default, the economic growth or the growth rate of it will be stagnant. There's very little that could be done unless, again, we try to kind of replicate, I would say, China's excellent experience. So within the region, if we can't find solutions, then it's a good strategy to try to and see what others have succeeded in a similar scenario. So first of all, governments have a role to play from the demand side, right? So if a cluster is stagnating and they're producing something that does not have demand, then it starts by finding the right market, address the demand side, try to find an export opportunity in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, regions that we have not explored yet. Address the supply side constraints. So maybe if you're talking about the medicinal and aromatic plants cluster in Egypt, a lot of the growers are already saying that they're facing issues with water scarcity, water contamination. So it's limiting them from exporting organic medicinal and aromatic plants. They're not able to enter specific, like the European Union, for example. So how can I help them enter this market? This is where governments can help. It's worth noting, however, that overly relying on governments to do everything is also not the solution. In fact, in China, they more often than not, they rely on local leaders. So if a cluster is doing well, it's very important to rely on the local leads here. So they should be put on the driver's seat, the person nearest to the cluster. So if we're talking about Damietta, we're talking about Beni Suef, it's very important that those who are part of the cluster are the ones that come up with the solutions and they have a voice to the government. And in a like maybe just in 1 minute, I can summarize. I usually use this as a very good example, China's major potato cluster experience. I mean, the way China worked around to ensure that this cluster grows over time is that, first of all, they tied the promotions of the local leaders in the local governorate. They're not going to get promoted unless the clusters in their jurisdiction does well. So first of all, how you tie a governor's budget, income and budget, and the governorate's budget to the performance of a cluster is key. So if I identify a cluster as working well, then I might as well need to put this local governor on the lens, basically. Second, they start to encourage them to establish trader and producer associations, right? Because again, the local government cannot speak with many farmers, but I need to see associations and I need to see heads of associations that are very, very clear. Then you start by updating the market system. So I want to know the information, everything. I want to acquire and understand what's happening in this potato market. I want to understand what are the locations of the key wholesale markets. Maybe it's very important also the country there. They started broadcasting information like in the radio and the TV and newspaper about that specific cluster so that they make sure there's information is flowing well. And that, again, the transparency basically helps traders less likely to cheat farmers. So this kind of support that the government did. After that, they started setting up a new system for local wholesale markets. So we identified the markets, but now there is room to make it better. So how can I overcome these transportation bottlenecks? For example, they realized they needed better transportation vehicles, better roads. They started subsidizing farmers to build storage facilities with the required ventilation. So again, building the necessary infrastructure around the cluster, not necessarily intervening in the cluster. By time they started to develop the processing sector, and that's key in any cluster. We need to make sure that the value chain gets bigger and bigger over time. So here what China did is that they ensured that they produce more than potatoes, right? So they started really focusing on developing the processing sector. So in 2004, they started off only with 2 plants that produced starch and potatoes. And then quickly, as we speak, as of today, they now produce modified starch for industry use. They produce frozen French fries, potato chips, potato flour, all of the different kind of variations that could have been produced. And now they're exporting big time. So it goes without saying that there is a recipe for us to make sure that the cluster can lead to economic growth. And there is room for the government to support, but without directly intervening. One last point that I got a question on before is that if small land size ownership is an issue, I mean, the fact that our landscape in Egypt is that farmers have less than 5 fedans. So how then can a cluster grow in a landscape? And again, similar experience in China, they never dealt with the small parcels of land as an issue. In fact, they used to deal with it in a way that they combine services, right? So we have one harvesting machine, one cultivation machine, and what have you, and then they try to combine. Farmers can come in together and they can rent these facilities to one another. So there are different ways to come around the bottlenecks. Companies can rent the land from a group of farmers. Again, all of this is only very likely to happen in a cluster context. And as just suggested, there is limited interventions that can be taken by the government and owners, but it should come from within and from the people.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Fatma. That was really interesting, and you really covered like everything, like from policy to practice. Like I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much for your time. Our second speaker is Donatella Saccone, who is assistant professor of economic policy at the University of Gastronomic Sciences, specializing in sustainable economic development, food policies, and global food security. Donatella has a PhD in economics from the University of Torino. He served as the director of the Turin Center on Emerging Economies and consultant for organizations like the ILO and UN Trade and Development. At the University of Gastronomic Sciences, Donatella leads the graduate degree program in sustainable food innovation and management. She contributes to interdisciplinary projects like Stables that focus on food system resilience in the MENA region. Her work bridges academia and policy addressing sustainability challenges in global agri-food systems. Thank you very much, Donatella, and welcome. Please.
Thank you.
My questions to you, Donatella, based on your experience with projects like Stables, how can agri-food systems in the Mediterranean address external shocks and vulnerabilities in the global value chains? to ensure food security and stability? Also, how can policy frameworks in the Mediterranean region better integrate global food security considerations with local economic priorities to support long-term sustainability in the agri-food systems? Thank you.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation and for your questions, Amr. Let me spend a few words to illustrate what the Staples project is to answer your first question. So, Staples is a project that has been recently financed by the PRIMA program, the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean Area. And the acronym STAPLES stands for Stable Food Access and Prices and Lower Exposure to Shocks. The project involves both European and North African countries, but as the project mainly focuses on Egypt and Morocco, our local partners are from these two countries mainly, with, by the way, ERF being a prominent partner of the project. To answer your first question, the idea on which the project is based is that three actions are really essential for addressing external shocks and vulnerabilities in global value chains and for ensuring food security and stability in the Mediterranean area. Just to summarize the three actions, and then I will give you details. First, it's about understand and predict. Second, identify policy options. And third, inform stakeholders. So starting from the first, understanding and predicting. We need deeper understanding of the global agri-food value chain through data analysis. And this is necessary to identify potential shocks and stressors coming from global markets. By the way, this allows not only to take a picture of the present, but also based on dynamic techniques and multi-scenario analysis to predict how a shock taking place elsewhere can affect food supply chains in Mediterranean countries. The second action, identifying policy options, regards the identification of effective strategies to be implemented when the shock takes place. And this can be done only by considering the entire value chain domestically and globally, rather than the markets for single commodities, as was also underlined by Jair Zaki in his speech. And the key action in this regard is also to map and incorporate stakeholders and traditional knowledge about coping strategies along the value chain. The third action is inform stakeholders. Basically, once effective multi-level strategies have been identified, they need to be made available. And in this sense, an important role is played by digital technologies and decision support tools to policymakers and economic actors in order to improve their preparedness and resilience. Moving to your second question about the policy framework, the research of the project is still ongoing, so I will be more capable to answer this question fully when the project will be concluded. But what I can anticipate is that I can identify four main areas on which the policy framework of the Mediterranean region should focus to promote food security. First, it has to do on the reduction of each country's dependency from other countries, and this can be done by supporting domestic productive and storage capacity and by promoting diversification. This includes promoting sustainable agricultural practices like climate-resilient farming and agroecology, and supporting smallholders by enhancing their access to productive resources like credit, land, technology, education, and their access to markets. And this can also include targeted subsidies or programs for smallholders, farmers engaged in sustainable practices to promote them. Second area on which the policy framework should focus is about defending poor consumers' purchasing power as the shock takes place through the adoption of food stamps, consumption subsidies, and social safety net programs. Third area of action and for the policy framework is about promoting trade regionalization. This means, as has been already mentioned by other speakers, strengthening cooperation between Mediterranean countries to enhance regional food security through shared resources, trade agreements, and technology transfer. In this sense, trade policies should support the development of regional value chains, and this can be done by reducing barriers for farmers to access regional markets, promoting the harmonization of standards and regulations, and financing infrastructural development. Fourth and last area for the policy framework, engaging stakeholders and building capacity through multi-stakeholder platforms involving all the actors playing in the food supply chain, like governments, businesses, universities, but also local communities and civil society organizations. In this regard, I think that the aim of the Staples project and the experience that we are having are very meaningful, because the project aims at developing a dashboard which through maps, tables and charts with also different languages available will provide information about key factors in the global value chain, like prices of cereals and of main input and related products, tariff and non-tariff barriers, stock levels, expected domestic production, and the related alerts. And moreover, based on the dashboard, the project has the aim to design a decision support system as a toolkit that the actors along the entire value chain and policymakers also can use to identify solutions for addressing the cereal supply chain in case of stressors and shocks deriving from international markets. So I can conclude by stressing how only through a multi-level and a multi-actor policy framework, which is coordinated from the global to the local level, we can defend food security of the Mediterranean area in an era that is characterized by an exceptional degree of uncertainty and where shocks are expected to increase in both frequency and magnitude. So thank you for the attention, and thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Donatella. I'm very happy with your presentation, and I'm very happy also to be part of Staples. I'm very happy to work with you. Thank you very much. Our third speaker is Mahdi Khomsi from Business Med. He's the International Relations Coordinator at Business Med, where he oversees Business Med's partnership and activities, spearhead the management of various projects with the green and blue economy. Mahdi has a robust background in supporting entrepreneurs in sustainable economies. He has a strong experience in engaging with participants and contributor in projects across multiple Mediterranean countries such as Egypt, Jordan, Malta, Lebanon, Italy, Turkey, Tunisia, and Spain. Mahdi holds a degree in management and a master's in entrepreneurship from IHEC Carthage, specializing in economics, politics, and international development. Very glad to have you, Mahdi. Welcome. My questions, Mahdi, with your extensive experience with Business Med network across the Mediterranean, how do you see regional partnership? How can a regional partnership strengthen agri-food value chains and to promote sustainable practices within the sector? Are there specific examples of successful collaboration that highlight these opportunities? Also, given your work in supporting entrepreneurs in sustainable economies, what specific challenges do agri-food SMEs face in accessing export markets? And how can initiatives like those led by Business Med help overcome these barriers? The floor is yours, Mahdi.
Thank you very much, Amr, for this introduction. I will talk in French. Donc, je vais parler en français. Je suis très honoré, je vous remercie pour nous donner la chance de s'exprimer sur ce sujet très important et qui prend, je pense, de l'ampleur de nos jours. Euh, euh, pour revenir pour la question comment créer des chaînes de valeur et comment créer un partenariat régional qui peuvent promouvoir la durabilité et ces chaînes de valeur dans l'agroalimentaire, tout d'abord, il faut déjà créer l'écosystème pour ça. Et donc, pour créer l'écosystème, il faut déjà créer et pousser et renforcer les organisations régionales qui travaillent dans ce sens. Moi, je prends l'exemple, aujourd'hui, je représente BusinessMed, l'Union Méditerranée des confédérations des entreprises, qui couvre 18 pays et qui a 25 membres dans les pays de la Méditerranée. Il y a aussi Anima, qui joue un rôle très important. Il y a aussi SIB, il y a la Chambre des commerces, donc tous ces acteurs-là qu'on appelle les BSO, les organisations de support aux entreprises, peuvent et qui ont un aspect régional, peuvent jouer ce rôle-là d'initiateur de ces partenariats. Car si on veut avoir des partenariats, il faut des acteurs qui sont outillés et qui ont les moyens. Lorsqu'on parle de problématiques, par exemple, pour les entreprises, qu'est-ce qu'ils ont? Ils ont un besoin de financement, ils ont un besoin de technologie, de transfert de connaissances. Et ces acteurs-là peuvent jouer le rôle de relais entre que ce soit le côté gouvernemental, mais aussi le côté recherche et innovation avec ces entreprises. Et généralement, les entreprises sont des acteurs locaux dans leur environnement. Et les acteurs, les organisations de support entreprise, c'est pour ça qu'elles peuvent jouer le rôle de relais et de partager ces connaissances. Et donc aujourd'hui, si on va parler de durabilité, déjà, on sait très bien que les entreprises ne sont pas assez outillées, ne sont pas déjà informées et sensibilisées sur ces aspects. Et donc, un grand rôle doit être joué par ces organisations de support aux entreprises pour sensibiliser ces entreprises et leur outiller avec des connaissances et aussi avec des technologies, peut-être avec des outils qui peuvent les aider dans leur travail quotidien et pour les aider à transformer leur business model. Et donc là, d'autres problématiques aussi, c'est le financement. Si on veut faire cette transition, il y a le volet financement qui est important. 80% des entreprises maintenant, des PME dans la région, ne survivent pas après 2 années d'activité. Pour assurer aussi la durabilité, il faut réfléchir comment financer ces entreprises et avoir un financement disponible pour eux et facile, accessible, parce qu'il y a des financements, mais qui sont assez difficiles d'accès pour eux. Il faut trouver des moyens faciles qui peuvent les aider à surmonter les défis et assurer une survie. Et donc, si on va dans une échelle plus grande, donc, il y a les acteurs industriels aussi, qui jouent un rôle central dans cet aspect-là, et ils couvrent un rôle important dans la chaîne de valeur alimentaire. Ces acteurs sont aussi confrontés à des ressources limitées, à des coûts énergétiques croissants, à une forte périssabilité de produits, ce qui entraîne une perte de 13% des aliments entre la récolte et la vente au détail, selon la FAO dans un rapport publié en 2023. Et donc, si on arrive à toucher cette perte de déchets et ces déchets à réduire et devenir plus efficace dans ce sens, on peut ça peut dynamiser toute la chaîne de valeur. Parce que malheureusement, si on veut aussi créer des chaînes de valeur durables, il faut réfléchir à tous les acteurs et que tous les acteurs soient gagnants-gagnants dans ce partenariat. Et donc, malheureusement, dans nos chaînes de valeur, il faut aussi réfléchir aux agriculteurs qui sont le maillon faible. Et on voit de nos jours en France, en Europe, en Tunisie et peut-être dans d'autres pays, malheureusement, on n'entend pas leur voix, mais ils sont le maillon faible. Et pour assurer des chaînes de valeur durables, il faut aussi réfléchir que chaque acteur ait sa part. On sait très bien que la vente d'un produit alimentaire, que l'agriculteur gagne que moins de 10% du prix de ce produit-là, et ce qui n'est pas durable aussi pour l'agriculteur. Et donc, vraiment, il faut y réfléchir. Et les gains qu'on peut gagner en termes d'efficience et en termes de réduction de déchets peuvent peut-être assurer ou les orienter pour faire un peu d'équilibre entre tous les acteurs de la chaîne de valeur. Et donc, ça, c'est quelques exemples comment je pense arriver à créer des partenariats et des chaînes de valeur. Et aussi, il faut utiliser les outils tels que les clusters qui jouent un rôle essentiel, mais aussi il y a les Living Labs. Et là, BusinessMed, nous avons participé dans un projet où nous avons soutenu dans le cadre du projet la Commission européenne pour créer 100 Living Labs. Et les Living Labs, c'est un environnement où il y a tous les acteurs de l'écosystème qui peuvent, tels que les chercheurs, les industriels, la société civile, pour réfléchir sur des solutions pour le secteur de l'agroalimentaire. Et ce genre d'outils tels que les Living Labs peuvent être vraiment un laboratoire vivant, justement, qui peuvent donner des solutions et des outils qui peuvent vraiment créer ces chaînes de valeur et aussi orienter dans la bonne direction. Aussi, notre région, aussi, on sait très bien que plus de 50% de la jeunesse méditerranéenne va se concentrer en Afrique du Nord, notamment dans 5 pays, Maroc, Algérie, Tunisie, Libye, Égypte. Et donc, ces jeunes-là aussi, il faut préparer dès maintenant l'écosystème pour les absorber, pour les outiller et pour les orienter, pour proposer des startups, des solutions qui peuvent vraiment être un atout pour la création de ces chaînes de valeur dans le système agroalimentaire. Et donc, nous, en tant que BusinessMed, j'ai parlé de l'exemple de Nation, le projet s'appelle Nation, où on essaie de supporter la création de Living Lab. Nous avons, en tant que BusinessMed, joué le rôle de mise en relation entre les acteurs pour créer ces consortiums ou ces Living Labs. Et donc là, nous avons fait une plateforme qui a regroupé plus de 900 acteurs de tous l'écosystème où on a essayé de faire des activités pour qu'ils créent quelques groupements pour réfléchir sur ces problématiques. Et nous avons vraiment réussi à faire plus de 150 matchmaking dans le cadre de ce projet-là. Et aussi, nous avons outillé ces acteurs avec des formations, comment créer ces Living Labs pour aussi assurer le financement et assurer la durabilité. Et bien évidemment, la Commission européenne a aussi offert un financement pour ces acteurs pour aussi assurer leur travail. Aussi, nous sommes partis
Sorry,
du Mediterranean Innovation Partnership.
sorry to interrupt
Oui,
you, Mahdi. If you can conclude in 30 seconds, please.
oui. Donc voilà, j'ai voulu dire que aussi nous, en tant que businessmen, nous sommes partis du Mediterranean Innovation Partnership où nous venons avec l'Union pour la Méditerranée, avec le CIAM aussi qui joue un rôle très très important, avec aussi UNIMED, où on essaye de publier chaque année un rapport où on essaye de parler avec les acteurs, avec l'écosystème pour voir leurs problématiques. Et je vous invite à consulter ce rapport-là qui vient d'être publié, je pense, la semaine dernière du MIP, Mediterranean Innovation Partnership. Je vous invite à le consulter. Vous allez trouver beaucoup d'informations et d'orientations dans le secteur de l'agroalimentaire dans la Méditerranée parce qu'il veut être un observatoire qui suit l'évolution du secteur. Donc, désolé de dépasser mon temps, mais je vous remercie. J'espère que j'étais clair dans les idées que j'ai voulu mentionner. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mahdi. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're very tight in time, but thank you very much and very impressive. Our fourth, last but not least, speaker is Jennifer Smolak from FAO. She works in the Agri-Food Systems and Agribusiness of FAO unit, Department of FAO. She has over 10 years of experience in the Near East and North Africa region, supporting regional and country level policy and program activities on agro-industry, value chain, and agribusiness development, and food loss and waste reduction for sustainable food systems. Very happy to have you, Jennifer, with us. Thank you for joining. My questions, Jennifer, in your experience with agribusiness development and food systems, what are the key export opportunities for South Mediterranean clusters, agri-food clusters, that are currently underexplored? How can these clusters build stronger connection with international markets to boost their export potential? Also, with growing concerns around global food security and sustainability, what role can South Mediterranean countries play in leveraging innovative practices to enhance the competitiveness of their agri-food exports, especially in terms of reducing food loss and waste throughout the value chain? The floor is yours, Jennifer.
Hey, thank you very much, and thank you so much for inviting FAO to speak in this event. It's really, um, I don't know how I can add very much to the panelists and the speakers who've gone before me, who've added so much already, but I'll try and maybe spark some ideas. Um, so many of the South Med countries have suitable climate conditions and a production calendar that's advantageous for exporting, either to the new EU markets or to Gulf markets or even further afield, Asia, America. So, and especially some of the nearer markets in the Near East are demanding more volume of quality, safe, and seasonal products. So there's really an untapped trade opportunity there. This has been mentioned already. But stronger connections with international markets needs at its foundation stronger value chains. It's kind of been mentioned, but let's remember that the production systems in the region are predominantly small scale. Okay, well over 80% of the region's production is small scale farming. The agri-food value chains or agri-food systems rather are dominated by SMEs that are labor intensive, poorly integrated within value chains. Many are informal, weak value chain infrastructure, very weak access to finances. This was just mentioned. And the result of all of this, or another factor, is low value addition capacity. So if we're talking about untapped export opportunities, we can look at the existing export products and see where value addition can be added, for example, by better packaging, processing products, some of the products that are, fruit, vegetable, olive oil, dates, these kind of things that are leaving the region and the region has capacity for exporting can go in a higher value product. So really, this is an untapped opportunity. Women represent a sizable portion of agriculture labor and as informal labor across the food system. So the role of women, access to finance, access to services, markets is really a critical factor for thinking about creating critical mass along value chains within, the cluster system or in a value chain that's upgrading to tap export opportunities. So there's some systemic changes that need to happen. And I'm looking rather across the food system rather than individual value chains, but this can, maybe trigger some systemic change in different contexts. I'll list a few of them that I think are relevant. For one, it's adjusting business models to sustain and strengthen agri-food prices. So business models and the way that businesses interact with each other, the institutional capacity of SME associations, for example, all along the value chain financing solutions, inclusive business models, linking smallholders to farmers to markets, the innovative models of aggregation, contract farming, e-commerce, and the policy regulatory frameworks that will allow that to happen. Okay, that's one. Number two is more efficient logistics, storage facilities to preserve safety and quality. So we're looking at energy efficient market infrastructure, cold chain infrastructure, smart technologies for packing and packaging, storage, traceability, receipt systems. There's lots of different options. Number three is building women's capacity to engage in agri-food supply chain. So again, inclusive business models, but also looking at digital technologies, support provision, and also the policy and legal framework that's conducive to women's employment and entrepreneurship, whether it's labor standards, whether it's regulations that support inclusive employment. There's a lot we can look into in that area. The harnessing the power of innovation and digital solutions. So this is already about, but it's all along the value chain, whether it's extension advisory, whether it's digital business B2B or B2C, finance using non-financial institutions or non-finance institutions using digital payments. So there's areas to explore, and we can use this to strengthen the capacity of SMEs. Number five is ensuring the food safety and nutritional quality of food. So food safety, food quality, this is a complex topic with a lot of regulatory oversight, a lot of different ministries involved, actors involved, and it's something that really suffers across food systems in the Near East and North Africa. It's the quality and safety of food. There's some countries that have better records than others in terms of their traceability systems, in terms of their risk-based food safety management systems. So this all has to be strengthened. Intra-regional trade and looking at the sort of aligning, harmonizing trade policies with regards to food safety can help boost trade in this regard. And a lot of capacity development, awareness raising. But there really has to be market incentive. Where there's capacity, we have to incentivize with remuneration through prices and market access for better quality, or for practices, applying the good practices that preserve safety and quality of food. Regarding food loss and waste, so there's really a lot to say about food loss and waste, and FAO has produced quite a bit of analysis and policy tools globally and at the regional level. The reason for this is if we dig into the issue of food loss and waste, it really uncovers some of the issues we see in food systems and the opportunities for sustainability in food systems. So the International Panel on Climate Change report in 2022 stated with high confidence that adaptation strategies that reduce food loss and waste or that support balanced diets contribute to nutrition, health, biodiversity, and other environmental benefits. So on a closing note, really, food loss and waste is a very big issue, but the solutions to it could really help boost exports in the conversation we're having. But if there's something I'd like you to take away is that food loss reduction can be a powerful way to enhance the adaptation capacity of value chain actors, small-scale family farmers, agribusinesses, who are facing greater frequency and intensity of climate events. So they will need to adapt. Yes, food loss and waste reduction can reduce greenhouse gas emissions and contribute to mitigation efforts, but it's the adaptation through climate smart agri-food processing, improved storage, energy efficient cold chain, et cetera, that can help these actors weather the storm, so to speak, of climate events as they happen. That link between climate change and food loss is really, really key here. So I'll end there and thank you again so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Very, very interesting. And it seems all the challenges are also linked to the small farmers because they don't really have access to most of these services. Thank you very much. And I have not a lot, but I have some questions for the panel, but I will keep it to the Q&A because we are running out of time a little bit. I will give the floor to Yasmin Arabi to introduce the next session. Thank you very much, Yasmin.
Thank you so much, Amr, and thanks to the panelists. Actually, the interventions and the insights you've shared paves the way very smoothly to the next session, because talking about international expertise and models like Ms. Fatma has shared from China, and talking about overall, like Mahdi also shared about the activities done by BusinessMed and how it's very important to connect and see how everything is going. You don't only look at the local ecosystem, but you see how there are actually successful experiences internationally is the core or a key part of Euromed Cluster Forward. This is why one of the key activities is around twinning projects and making sure that the South Med clusters meet with the northern clusters and they exchange more about the know-how, experiences, open channel for markets, and learn from each other. And this is the first part where Zoe will be actually introducing us to. And the second presentation we'll be hearing from Andy is going to be about the opportunities European Union provides and some of the projects that are currently ongoing, which can be very enabling and address some of the challenges we talked about right now related to financing the small medium farmers or the small and medium farmers and ensuring that it's inclusive. And also this addresses part of what Mr. Anwar said previously when he was talking about establishment of clusters in Jordan. So Zoe and Andy, thank you so much for joining us. I'll leave you with the floor with you, but please, I would really appreciate if you can time your presentation to be 8 to 9 minutes so that we don't really be late. Thank you again, and I leave you now with Zoe.
Thank you very much. So I will share a few slides. Can you see them? Can you see my slides?
Yes, Zoe, we can.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
The slides are in English and I will speak in French. Donc, je voulais juste présenter quelques opportunités qui peuvent permettre de tester des formats de collaboration pour avancer sur ce sujet de la création de chaînes de valeur régionales dans le secteur food. Emmanuel Notari, le délégué général d'Anima, avait dit quelques mots sur le projet Euromed Cluster Forward. Il est, alors si je peux changer de slide, il est structuré en trois piliers. Un pilier sur les politiques, plus de travail sur les politiques d'appui au cluster, un pilier sur le renforcement des capacités et un pilier sur vraiment l'aspect business et création de liens. Je voulais faire un petit zoom sur trois activités en particulier qui peuvent permettre de tester des projets qui aideront à créer ces chaînes de valeur régionales. D'abord, le Cluster Connect, en fait, c'est un programme de twinnings entre clusters, donc qui est piloté, oui, j'aurais dû commencer par ça, par notre partenaire Veritech. Donc j'étais très heureuse de voir dans la liste des participants de nombreux partenaires et participants du projet. Et voilà, on est un projet européen, mais on est beaucoup des liens humains entre des organisations publiques, privées dans tous nos pays, et c'est vraiment la somme de toutes ces énergies qui permet d'avancer sur ces questions. Donc, Veritech pilote le Cluster Connect, c'est un programme de twinning qui est très opérationnel. C'est des calls qui sont diffusés sur nos réseaux sociaux, ceux de Veritech, ceux de tous les partenaires du projet, assez régulièrement. Le dernier call est en cours et ça permet de faire une petite opération sur une durée de 3 mois d'échange entre deux clusters, un cluster dans un pays sud-méditerranéen et un autre qui permet de répondre à la demande exprimée dans un autre pays couvert par le projet, a priori plutôt en Europe. Là, c'est un exemple de format de collaboration réussi qu'on est en train d'appuyer dans le domaine mécatronique et électronique entre un cluster marocain et un cluster français. Mais vous voyez que là, dans le matching qui est en train d'être piloté en ce moment, on a deux clusters agro qui ont été sélectionnés. Le cluster à Léopold du Maroc qui cherche un partenaire en France sur les problématiques que vous voyez, et le cluster primeur du Sud de Tunisie. Donc, n'hésitez pas à suivre les prochains calls pour proposer des idées de projets, des thématiques que vous identifiez comme intéressantes sur lesquelles vos organisations pourraient avoir besoin d'expertise ou d'échanges de pratiques avec des interlocuteurs européens. Et on va d'ailleurs aussi essayer d'ouvrir ce format pour cibler des problématiques, pas seulement renforcement des capacités, mais vraiment business. Pas forcément nord-sud, ça peut être aussi sud-sud. Enfin, on va essayer de rendre le format encore plus flexible parce qu'on a vu que ça fonctionnait très bien. Deuxième type d'activité, c'est les Tech Days. C'est un événement qu'on organise 1 ou 2 fois par an. L'année prochaine, ça devrait être au Liban et en Tunisie. Il y a souvent des focus sectoriels, mais pas toujours. Donc, suivez les prochaines opportunités. Là, c'est vraiment une bonne façon de rencontrer des pairs avec lesquels vous pourriez par la suite engager des collaborations. On sait que répondre à des appels d'offres, ça demande beaucoup de temps, d'énergie, et on ne veut pas le faire complètement à l'aveuglette. On a besoin de se rencontrer d'abord, de se parler d'abord, d'identifier qu'on a des sujets communs avant d'avancer dans d'autres formats de collaboration. Et c'est souvent comme ça que ça s'est passé dans le projet Euromed Cluster Forward. Donc, suivez les prochaines opportunités. Là, vous voyez quelques chiffres qui montrent l'impact des premiers Tech Days qu'on a pu organiser grâce au projet Euromed Cluster Forward. Et puis le dernier outil que je voulais présenter avant de passer la main à mon collègue Mandy, c'est un programme qui s'appelle Made by Euromed Clusters, qui va être mis en œuvre. Enfin, c'est des petits budgets qui vont être pilotés par les différentes organisations qui mettent en œuvre le projet. Donc, vous voyez les logos en bas de la slide, et qui vont permettre à des clusters de tester là aussi des projets de collaboration à 3 au moins 3 pays impliqués, au moins un pays européen et ensuite les autres soit européens, soit sud-méditerranéens. Et sur des montants de quelques dizaines de milliers d'euros, voilà, pouvoir mobiliser des jours d'expertise, des billets d'avion, de la logistique pour identifier des opportunités de collaboration, faire des événements de matchmaking, enfin tout ce qui va permettre d'aboutir au développement de nouvelles activités, nouveaux produits, entrée sur le marché, collaboration commerciale ou technologique. Donc voilà un petit peu pour le tour d'horizon des opportunités liées au projet. Je vous invite aussi à consulter régulièrement l'agenda des événements qui est publié sur nos sites web. Et voilà, j'espère que tout ça donnera du grain à moudre à tous ceux qui nous connaissent déjà et ceux qui ne nous connaissent pas encore. Et j'ai fini pour ma présentation. Merci.
Good afternoon,
Thank you,
everyone.
Zoe. Andy, I think you can go ahead with the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Yasmin. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Andy, and I'm working also for Anima as Director of Development. And I will share with you some slides regarding potential opportunities that could be interesting for the different structure regarding European projects that could fund interesting activities related to agri-food value chains. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. So I will start with the Interreg NextMed program, the objective, priorities, and opportunities. So just as a sum up regarding the cooperation within the Mediterranean area, Interreg NextMed is the third edition of the EU-funded external cooperation program towards the Mediterranean area. And so it builds on experience of the previous projects, previous program, which name was MECBC Med from 2007. So it means that many projects were already funded for many partners within the regions, for more than 17 years now. And so the next MED is coming afterwards, the two programs, and is basically capitalizing on the projects that were already funded on diverse and various topics. And so let's say the objective also of the program is to contribute to joint prosperity, stability, and common challenges within the region, and with the wish, to, let's say, promote cooperation, equal footing, and balanced partnership. So regarding the next MED for the year 2021 and 2027, so next MED is focusing on territorial cooperation, and it's linked to the EU cohesion policy, and it is funded for 10 billion euros for the 7 years of the program, and let's say the primary wish is to reinforce cooperation with partner countries, and now with the Southern Neighborhood, as they call it, for the European Union. It means that here, as you can see, we are deeply in a transnational cooperation and transnational program in order to better cooperate and to promote the regional development. So here, as you can see, we are in Strand B regarding the transnational program, and within the Strand B, there are 2 programs which are focusing on neighborhood and external neighborhood, and so the Interreg NextMed is within this framework. That's why it's the largest transnational cooperation program on the EU's external borders, and we have now 15 participating countries for the Interreg NextMed program, which is targeting more than 200 million people living in the cooperation area. Regarding the vision and ambition of the program as well, so the program ambition is to contribute to a smart, sustainable, and fair development for the Mediterranean region, and in order to support let's say a regional cooperation and to promote multi-level governance as well. as you can see, so the program is also focusing on 4 priorities. So a more competitive and smarter Mediterranean, a greener, low carbon and resilient Mediterranean, a more social and inclusive Mediterranean, and a better cooperation governance of the Mediterranean. And if you have a look at the priority 2, there are like 4 specific objectives. So on energy efficiency, on the climate change adaptation and prevention, on access to water and sustainable water management, and the 4th one on the transition to a circular and resource efficient economy. And especially regarding like the agri-food value chains, the specific objective like of this priority and maybe like the specific objective 2.4 and transition to a circular and resource efficient economy could be interesting for organization of the region, like to get into position, like for some call for proposal that are targeting these priorities and these specific objectives. That's why, like regarding the timeline of call for proposal, it's also interesting because like this year in 2023, there was the first call with the deadline last May, but the second call on green transition will very soon be published. Actually, for example, tomorrow here there is in Marseille a meeting regarding like the next call at the Région Sud. And the second call we focus on green transition will be like around 80 million euros. And as you could see, it will focus so then on the priorities that could be interesting also like for structure and companies that are working like also like regarding like the agri-food value chains. So the next steps will be like the official publication of the second call with all the requirements and the expectation also like of the European Union regarding the priorities. And so like I think within the next days, if you are interested also like in this call, the call documents will be available, and then you could have like an exchange with different structures that could be also like interested to get into position for the next call, which deadline should be around mid-March normally. Then after like the next MED program, I would like also like to present you the partnership on research and innovation in the Mediterranean area. And so it's also like to make the link, for example, with the Staples project that was introduced as well, coming from the Prima program. So regarding the Prima program, the general objective also is here like to build research and innovation capacities and to develop knowledge and common innovative solution for agri-food systems. Sorry, it's also like a program which is targeting specifically the Mediterranean area. It could be interesting for also our structure. Regarding the funding projects, also they are targeting 4 things. First, the farming systems. Second, agri-food value chain, so which could be interesting for us. Water management, and then the nexus, for water, energy, food ecosystem. If we focus especially on what is interesting for us today, the agri-food value chain. So the main objective also like is to promote a sustainable Mediterranean agri-food value chain for regional and local development. We are also like in a situation where 20 countries are committed to the initiative. So 20 countries, of course, like of the Mediterranean region, as you can see, who could be eligible like to propose a project proposal regarding this program. Right now, it means that we are in a period of the next, I would say, funding for Prima, because like it's also like working like through multiple year period, and now like there is another budget through Horizon Europe that was also like published for the period 2025-2027, and now they added like 105 million euros from the European Union budget. So it means that at the end, the whole Prima program is around 600 million euros, with 274 million from the participating states and the rest from the European Union as well. Regarding the scope of the agri-food value chain component, as you could see, like regarding Prima, what they are looking for also is to try to promote deployment and demonstration of sustainable solutions to reduce food losses and waste, save energy, and enhance food safety as well. So as you can see, like they are also targeting green technologies, renewable energy sources, also like everything could be linked like to training and building capacities and policy recommendations are also like the main outcomes on PRIMA program and what the European Union and the participating countries would like also like to fund regarding the different opportunities. And regarding also like the expected impacts of the agri-food value chain component. So of course, improving food quality is the main also like result that should be also addressed. Interaction between stakeholders and cooperation, regional cooperation is of course like very important, and find innovative solutions and links for research and also like innovation is something that is very promoted for the program. Here, and you could find it also like on the official web page of the program. Here, an example of agri-food value chain project that was funded on the PRIMA. So, for example, the new feed project. So, in order like to turn food industry byproducts into secondary feedstuff via circular economy schemes. So, it's just one example that has been funded for a total amount of for more than 2 million euros. And then, which could be interesting, we do not have yet also like the official date, but the next call for proposal will be during the first semester 2025. So of course, like I think it could be interesting, like if you keep updated regarding this program, and as soon as we have also like informal information, it's information that we could share with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Andy, and for the interesting actually presentation. We're having a lot of messages right now saying that it's very informative and it's good to know about the future opportunities. And I would like to add to saying that there are actually on the chat, Ms. Yasmin have shared a number of opportunities and initiatives available. If someone is interested, please check the chat inbox. It's shared by Miss Yasmin, and there's a couple of other initiatives shared also by Mahdi. So I think this is and reports. It's this is a very interesting session, really. We learned a lot about the twinning projects, and I'm sure that the clusters attending will be very interested in applying into the upcoming Cluster Connect. So thank you, Zoe and Andy, one more time. And now it's time for the concluding remarks, and I leave it to Yasmin Fahim, our director. So Yasmin, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yasmin. I think all the chairs did a good job summarizing, the gist of each session, so I'm not going to repeat that. And I just want to conclude by saying that we set out to do this webinar series to provide a platform for stakeholders from different backgrounds to share insights, best practices, and strategies for overcoming challenges and leveraging opportunities. And I think we did just that. So I feel very happy to have attended today's webinar and learned so much about this sector. And I would like to thank all the speakers, and I'd like to thank ANIMA for their support and for fostering this very collaborative environment. And I think we have benefit from the synergies between the different projects that are working around the same topic in the Mediterranean, Euro-Mediterranean region. And I think this is something we should be consistently doing by bringing together all these, projects working on common themes and learning from each other and benefiting from each other's experience, which I think was fantastic today. I'm sorry we had run over the time for the webinar, but the input from the different speakers was really interesting, and we would have cut it, if we would have cut it short, we would have lost a lot of value. So apologies for running late and not having enough time for discussion. We'll definitely rectify that in the next webinar, which is part of this series, which we expect to hold next March, and you'll be hearing from us about the next webinar in the series, which will be focused more on the regulatory framework for clusters operations in the region and the impediments, incentives, or lack thereof, and discussing the regulatory environment in general and in some countries in specific. We'll be bringing that to your attention in due course, and look forward to your active participation in the upcoming webinar as well. Again, I thank Anima, you, and our speakers and the participants for their contribution. And I hope you enjoyed the webinar as much as we did, and looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you all, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Goodbye.